Things that she says because they're important. She gives you tidbits, take notes. You're in for a really great treat. Please help me welcome Carla here.
Well, thank you for that introduction, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
I tell you, I am really honored to be here because there are a few things that I enjoy more than sharing what I like to call Carla's pearls, my hard-earned and hard-learned pearls after being a woman on Wall Street for 28 years. I dare say there are a few things that I have learned about not only surviving, but more importantly, thriving in the seat that you sit in or the seat that you aspire to sit in. Now, you've heard I've been on the street for 28 years, so yes, I am a seasoned, not old, seasoned deal-making gal. So I'd like to make a deal with you this afternoon. I will agree to tell you exactly how it is if you will agree to ask me anything that's on your mind when we get to Q&A. We have a deal? And nothing is off limits, okay? So one of the things that I really want to focus on today, or the main thing I should say that I want to focus on today, is my new book, Strategize to Win. And I'll give you a couple of pearls from my first book, Expect to Win, but I really want to focus on Strategize to Win because, frankly, I think it is a playbook for you. And that is certainly how I intended it, because I had no interest in writing a second book, but I kept coming across millennials, who I like to call emerging professionals, who kept asking questions like, you know, I'm interested in 5 or 6 different things. How do I know where to start my career? Or how long should I stay on a job? If I get the job after 2 years, should I be thinking about doing something else? Or I took a job coming out of college because I had a lot of undergraduate debt, and I just took a job to get a job because everybody was talking about how tough the economy was. Now I've been doing this for 5 or 6 years, and I hate it. How do I get out? Do I need to go back to school? How do I reposition myself? How do I get the job that I really want? So it was all these questions that I kept realizing were not answered in the first book, because the first book was really focused on how do you maximize your success in the seat that you're sitting in or the seat that you aspire to sit in. And I kept thinking there are a lot of young professionals who have questions and need answers around how to get to the right job. So I want to spend some time talking about that, and I'll give you a couple of other pearls that I think will be useful to you when you get your opportunity. So the first pearl that I want to leave you with this morning or this afternoon about Strategize to Win is, how do you get the job that you really want? How do you maximize your success in that interview? And what I have figured out is that most people don't know how to tell or sell their story. There are very few opportunities where your previous experience is the dominant affirmative factor in your getting the job. The key to successful positioning is to really understand what the buyer is really buying. If you understand what they are really buying, i.e. the key success factors of the role that you're interested in, then you know how to connect the dots between your story and what they are really buying. That's really the key. If you know what they're buying, then you know how to tell and sell your story. The only thing that I had on my resume when I got my first Wall Street opportunity was McDonald's. McDonald's. Now, you might ask yourself, what does flipping hamburgers have to do with selling stocks and bonds? But when I sat in the interview chair, I said to the interviewer that I was made crew member of the month while I was still on probation. For those of you who don't know, McDonald's puts you on probation for 90 days before they actually give you the job. And I was made crew member of the month while I was still on probation. I had the highest grossing register every night. I was made a manager while I was still in high school. And oh, by the way, I won the prize for suggesting sales. You know, when you go into a McDonald's, you say, can I get you a Big Mac? Somebody says, can I get you a large order of fry? I would always say, can I get you an apple pie with that? So I won the prize for suggesting sales. What did that say to the interviewer? Wow, she really has an appetite for winning. She's respected by her peers. She knows how to penetrate client thought. What do you have to do to be successful in Wall Street? You better be respected by your clients and your peers. You need to have an appetite for winning, and you need to know how to penetrate client thought. They could teach me about stocks and bonds, but what the buyer was really buying were those other attributes. And that's what's important for you to understand. What are they really buying? And you tell your story through that lens. I can take the same story from one person and sell that story, same facts, differently depending on what the opportunity is and what the key success factors are. You don't have to keep changing your resume to have it tailor a particular opportunity. It's all about how you tell your story. The other question that I kept getting from millennials was, well, wait a minute, how do you make yourself stand out? Everybody wants you to apply online. So how do you position yourself where you can be effective? I'll give you a few of my tricks. I still believe in the concept and the power of a great resume and an outstanding cover letter. Most people don't open their mail. That's what I hear over and over from people. People don't open their mail. They're looking for it online. And you may be right. People don't open their mail, but everybody opens their FedEx. Everybody opens the overnight mail. So if you send a great cover letter and a great resume overnight to whoever the hiring manager is, they're going to open that, and all you want is the pair of eyes on your piece of paper, especially if you have a compelling letter, because that's, again, something that people don't do, and it's certainly something that folks online will not have done. The other way to get the exposure is when you're thinking about a company, make sure you go online first and look at the management team and look at the board of directors and look to see whether or not there's anybody that you know at that company. And if you don't know anybody at the company, I'm going to tell you to look through the bios and figure out where they went to school. Perhaps they were an alum. And most people who are successful and who are alums make themselves available to talk to current students. And again, that's all you want is a shot. Also, think about the people that you know that graduated last year and 2 years from now. Even if you didn't, 2 years ago, even if you didn't know them, the fact that you are from their school, you can say, I'm really interested in your company. I'd really like to get this to Terry, to Mary, to Sam, whoever happens to be the hiring manager, and let them walk it in. Most companies will pay attention to current employees' recommendations. That's much easier for them than for them to go out on their own to try to find good candidates. But if Sam walks in and say, hey, I know this person, or this person's from my school, you might want to take a look, they'll take a look just because Sam asked. You'd be surprised at the capital that people have, particularly if they're already doing well in that organization. So here are all the ways that you can make sure that you have a bit of an edge and you can get people to take a look at your paperwork. Now, who in the room has a job that they're interested in having and they're not sure how they need to tell or sell their story? Anybody has a wish list for a job? Nobody's looking for a job? Everybody's independently wealthy? Really? Come on, I need somebody that can help with a story. Yes, ma'am.
I guess my end goal is in fashion trend forecasting.
Okay, fashion trend forecasting. Okay, who would you like to work for?
I think right now the company I'm kind of working for, but would like to translate that into a full-time job.
Okay, alrighty. Fashion trend forecasting. So tell me a little bit about yourself. I know that you're at University of Arizona. What else do I need to know?
I'm a triple major in management, information systems, operations management, retailing, and consumer sciences.
Okay, so why did you do a triple major?
I appreciate understanding data to drive results and then understanding the industry, your big picture in retail.
Okay, okay. All right, are you involved in anything else on campus?
Yeah.
Okay.
In the retelling program, I'm an ambassador for the Strategize partners. I'm an active member of Friends where 20 out in Vegas as magistrate. I am involved with the Professional Women in Business Association.
Okay. All right. You still haven't told me. Okay, I'm going to stop you there. What do you think the person that's hiring her as a fashion trend forecaster, what are they looking for? What are the key success factors for that job? Analytical skills. What else?
Do they know fashion?
Do they know fashion? What else? What make you successful in that job, you think?
Keeping up with the trends.
Keeping up with the trends. That's what he said, knowing fashion. consumer behavior. Anything else? Okay, so we know she needs analytical skills. We know she needs quantitative skills. What about her ability to build relationships? How's she going to find out what people are interested in terms of fashion? How is she going to get other information? Because she's forecasting, but she also wants to know those who are producing the fashion, what they're thinking about, what data they have, what information they are looking at, what is the consumer really interested in. So she needs to have relationships with people so she can have a conversation with them to really find out how they're thinking about things and what the trends might be. Yes? No? Are you with me? Okay. What can you tell me about your analytical or your quantitative skills? Okay, alrighty. So notice that when she told me her story, she told me what she was interested in. She told me what she, why she came here. She told me why she liked numbers. She wants to look at data and figure out how it directs her to big picture trends. She talked about the fact that she's organized a group of people that have on a trip now in Las Vegas, 23 kids. She also talked about the fact that she's an ambassador of the school, right? So the way that I would tell your story, what's your name? Layla. Layla? Layla Chavez. Okay, so the interviewer says, and this is the question that jams everybody up. Tell me about yourself. That's the question that kills everybody, because people are like, do I go back to high school? Do I talk about college? Do I tell them where I was born? And they get the key to the successful interview, because that's where you sell the interview, is you want to tell your story through the lens that I care about. And I care about those things that I just told you I cared about. So the way that I would tell Layla's story, tell me about yourself, Layla. What year are you? I'm a sophomore at the University of Arizona. I actually came to the University of Arizona because I'm very interested in consumer behavior, and I'm very interested in retail. And they have one of the best programs in the country with respect to retail and consumer behavior. I have very strong analytical and quantitative skills. I've always done well analytically. I did very well on my SAT scores, and I did very well, frankly, as a sophomore. I'm doing very well here. I also am very relationship oriented. All the things that I've chosen to be involved with are things that have immersed me in the campus. And I think I'm a bit of a leader because I was chosen to be an ambassador for my school. And that's a very competitive process. So you have to have a lot of school spirit. You have to know a lot about the school. And you have to want to sell the school. So I think that is something that has helped me even more with my relationship building skills. So much so that now I have been involved in helping to send 23 of my fellow students to Las Vegas for a retail and a fashion conference. So I've been involved here. I like it a lot. I'm very interested in retail. And one of the reasons that I want to be a fashion forecaster is that it's a great way for me to marry my strong analytical and quantitative skills with my interest in fashion. And that way I can look at numbers and predict trends that I think will be impactful in the industry. Would you hire Layla? Yes. Right. So that is your story. It's not my story. But I chose to tell your story through the lens of what the buyer is really buying. So whenever you're sitting, and if you had told me that you wanted to be an investment banker, I could have sold that. And what I would have sold, if you had said I'm interested in being an investment banker, I would have sold the analytical and the quantitative skills, and the fact that you were interested in retail and you want to look at emerging companies in retail and be a part of taking those companies public. You've watched the IPO of Michael Kors. You've watched the IPO of Vera Bradley. So you want to think about what's the next trend and the next company that's going to be a growth company in retail. And you could have said that's one of the areas that I'm interested in, because I don't think technology will disrupt retail. It will disrupt the way we consume retail, but we're still going to consume it. So I want to be a banker that's on the forward trends of figuring out retail as it integrates now with technology. Would have told the same story, right? It's still your story, but the key to being successful when you sit in that conversation is to tell your story and sell your story through the lens of what I am buying. And that's part of the homework you have to do. The second pearl that I want to leave you with is make sure that you do your homework. Be intentional about your conversation when you are looking for a job and when you are already in the job and you want to ascend or get paid more. And I can't tell you how many people under-negotiate because they don't do their homework. I saw it over and over again, especially with millennials who were so freaked out about the financial crisis that they just said, it's just good to have a job. And no, I know it's $7,000 less than I was making, but at least I have a job. Don't ever believe the hype. Don't ever get caught up in a bad economic environment dominating your thinking about what you are worth. Be very clear that even in tough economic environments, companies are trying to hire the best and the brightest. So if you consider that you are the best and the brightest, then you should make sure that you're getting your full value. But the only way you're going to get your full value is for you to know what your full value is before you walk into that conversation. So when they make you an offer that is at a discount to market value, you will have an appropriate response. But if you don't know that it's a discount to market value, or you're so freaked out by the economic environment, you could find yourself taking something that is inferior to what you should be getting. And I call that market value. And if the market is paying $100,000 for a role, there's no way you should be accepting an $80,000 offer or even a $90,000 offer. And so I saw the mistake going in, and I also saw the mistake when people were changing jobs. So if they were changing jobs and they were already getting underpaid, so here's the example. Think about Janet. Janet has been in a nonprofit environment, and she's risen to the executive director role. But when she started at the bottom, and she didn't negotiate very well. So where she is now is at $125,000. Well, she's interviewing for another executive director role for a very similar nonprofit, very similar size, so no real change in that balance sheet. But it's going to give her a little bit more exposure, and it's actually a lot more responsibility. But the market value for this executive director role is 150 to 170, and she's making 125. She goes through 10, 15 interviews. Everybody loves her. Everybody says, you're the perfect person we've been looking for. We'd like to make you this offer, and we're going to offer you $135,000. And Janet says, well, I really love the opportunity. I think I can add a lot of value here, but my understanding is that the market rate for this role is between 150 and 170. So I would like to be at the market rate. The interviewer, who happens to be the chair of the board, says, but you're making 125 now, and we're offering you 135. We're offering you more than what you're already making. Janet's response, what should it be? I'm listening. I'm worth more. What's the rest of the argument? Remember, be intentional about your communication. Whenever you're going to tell me you want more money, you need to tell me why it's worth my while to give you more money. Right? All right? Do you think Janet said anything? Or do you think she said, well, it's $10,000 more than I'm making. Should she take it? Should she take it?
No.
No. Why shouldn't she take it? Because what? She's selling herself short. Why is that an issue? The reason it's an issue is two reasons. Number one, if Janet takes a discount again, it's going to be very, very difficult for her to finally catch up in terms of market rate over time. Because every time she gets ready to get another job, if she doesn't message it, if she doesn't communicate correctly, they're going to keep basing her next salary off of her last salary. And if they're basing it off of her last salary, she's already behind. The second reason is that it is important is that it might make a statement about Janet's judgment. I have a friend who had a job, and she got a call from a headhunter for a similar position, and the market rate was 200, but she was making 100. And when the interviewer or the headhunter found out, he thought, uh-oh. He thought she was fabulous. He thought she was great. But when he said, what are you making? And she said 100, he thought, uh-oh, something's wrong here. Either she's not as good as I thought she was because she's making half of market rate on this, or she didn't negotiate well. And either way, that has implications about her judgment. I'm not so sure I should give her the opportunity. So let's go back to my friend Janet. Janet said, again, I think that I would do a great job. I love the company. I love the opportunity. I love the organization. Here are 3 ways that I think I can add value. And I think you would want me to be compensated at the level of my contribution. So I would take this opportunity in a minute if it was at market rate, anywhere between 150 and 170. You think they gave her the offer? Did they give her more money? Absolutely they did. That is another pearl from my first book. You don't ask, you don't get. You don't ask, you don't get. There is one person that has responsibility for your career, and that is you. With all due respect to the human resources majors in the room, it is not human resources' job to make sure that you're getting the exposure to the experiences once you join a company, or that you're maxing out with respect to your compensation, or that you get promoted on time. It is up to you to understand what the trajectory is in that company, how often people get promoted, what portfolio of skills they need in order to be eligible for promotion. And it is your job to articulate when you think you are ready. And you should always ask for the promotion a year before you think you're ready. I say a year before you think you're ready. Why? Because they're going to say to you, what's your name?
Chris.
Chris. They're going to say, oh, Chris, you're looking to get promoted this year. You're not ready. We don't think you're ready. And Chris's response, really? Why not? What needs to happen in order for me to be ready? And then they're going to lay it out for him. So now you know, Chris, what you need to prosecute for the next 12 months. So 12 months from now, you won't have that conversation because you will have fulfilled everything that they told you you needed to do in order to be ready. But if they don't articulate that to you, then you could get that at the next end of the year about why you didn't get promoted. But you need to have those conversations. Any organization needs to hear your voice. Your voice is at the heart of your power. If they don't hear your voice, then they think, well, she's working hard, cares. And you don't have to say it in a tough way when you go to your evaluation. 1/3 of your evaluation should be about what you did last year. 2/3 of your evaluation should be about what you're going to prosecute going forward and what you need from the organization in order to be successful. I will never forget one year I did not get promoted. And I was sitting there just steaming mad. I was just angry, and it took me 2 weeks before I marched into my boss's office. And he said to me, oh, Carla, I was wondering when you were going to come in. Your colleagues have been coming in for the last 6 months telling me that it was important for them to get promoted. And I didn't hear anything from you. And I had to make a tough decision. So I took the path of least resistance. I couldn't even be angry at the guy because he told me the truth. He said, didn't you know we're the captain of our own ship? So from then on, I've been very clear to articulate my expectations around compensation and around promotion. One person that has responsibility for your career, and that is you. The next pearl I'm going to leave you with is that there are 2 types of currency in any environment. 2 types of currency: performance currency and relationship currency. And I want you to think to yourself that a dollar is not a dollar is not a dollar. Performance currency is worth about $1.50 when you first start your career. And performance currency is simply your intellect, plus your experience, plus your execution, times multiple times of doing it. The more you deliver well, deliver on time, deliver without fault, you will get a reputation of being very good at what you do. And in my first book, I talked about the fact that you got 90 days to put points on the board. You don't have a whole year to prove to the organization that you were a good hire. You need to put points on the board, however that is defined in your role in the first 90 days. I'm not telling you that you need to be an expert, but if analytical skills are valued, you need to demonstrate that you have expert analytical skills in whatever project you're working on. If creative skills and marketing skills are valued, you need to have come up with an interesting idea that the organization may be executing on. You don't have to be the expert, but you have to show me that you are more than adept at the things that I value. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, it's not just about working hard, right? It's about offering that which is valued. You can work hard all day long, but if you're working in a way that's inconsistent with the way they are thinking about success, you won't maximize your success in that role. So you should always ask the question, what does success look like? And going back to our interview, Pearl, you know, at the end of the interview, people say, do you have any questions for me? Right? How many people have gotten that question? How many people have felt that it was kind of awkward? Because in many cases, you didn't have a question. You'd already done your homework, right? Never leave that interview without having at least 2 questions. And the 2 questions that I absolutely love are as follows. Give me the profile of a superstar in this environment. The person that's a superstar at this company, how would you describe them? Why is that important? They're going to give you adjectives. They're going to say, oh, somebody who shows a lot of initiative, somebody who's fearless, somebody who has great writing skills, somebody who has great analytical skills, somebody who really shows a lot of initiative, self-motivated, detail-oriented. They're going to give you the description, and that is going to tell you clearly what they value. So now you know what to deliver in your first 90 days when you walk into that organization, because you know what they care about. The second question, give me the profile of the last person you fired. The person that wipes out in this organization, why do they wipe out? What's the story there? And they're going to describe somebody else. Now you know what they don't like, what they don't value, and what you should at all costs avoid. So performance currency you gain from doing an outstanding job, right? But I want you to think $1 is not $1 is not $1. And that performance currency is worth $1.50 when you first start. And I will tell you that performance currency is valuable because it does three things for you. It will definitely get you noticed, so it creates that reputation. It will get you paid and promoted very early on. And it may even attract a sponsor for you. And I'm going to tell you what a sponsor is in a second. But after 3 or 4 years in your career, that, especially at the same company, that performance currency has diminishing marginal returns. It's no longer worth $1.50 because now it's assumed that you're good. Now you have a reputation. What's going to make the difference in your ability to ascend now are the relationships that you invest in. And the relationships are very, very important. And you should have relationships with every organization, department that touches your seat. Every department that touches your seat, you need to have strong relationships with. So for example, I'm in capital markets. I was in capital markets. I work with the corporate finance people. I needed a network there. I worked with the research people. I needed a network there. I worked with the sales and trading people. Needed a network there. And I needed a network within my own area. So think about all the other parts of that company that touch your seat. You need to be investing in relationships, vertically and horizontally. And I'm going to tell you why. Once you get to a certain level, your ability to move up is a function of somebody's judgment. Judgment about whether or not you're ready for this opportunity. Judgment about whether or not the team will follow you. Judgment about whether or not you'll be successful in this new role. And judgment, ladies and gentlemen, judgment is directly affected by relationships. Directly affected by relationships. What's your name? Lisa and Jaron. So if I know Lisa and I know Jaron, and they both want to become executive vice presidents, but I have a relationship with Lisa and I don't have a relationship with Jaron, and they have exactly the same portfolio of skills, they have exactly the same tenure at my company, and they have exactly the same experiential set, I'm going to back Lisa all day long, especially if it's my currency being used behind closed doors on that decision. Why? Because I have a relationship with Lisa, I perceive, whether it's true or not, I perceive that I can influence her success. Because we have a relationship, I think I can pull her to the side if it's not going well and counsel her on what she needs to do. I also perceive that I can use my capital in the organization to provide her air cover or influence other people's perception of her and whether or not she's being successful. I also perceive that I can influence her success directly. Now that may or may not be true, but because we have a relationship, I think I can impact her success. And after all, if it's my personal capital being used on her behalf behind closed doors, I want to make sure she's successful. I am now invested, and I want a return on my capital. But if I don't know her very well, then I'm not going to think that I can influence her success. And if she fails, it doesn't look good for me because I backed her. So it's all a function of that relationship. So if you don't invest in those relationships, you will not be on the radar screen for the opportunities. It is not about favoritism. And don't get yourself caught up in what politics are all about. Politics, it is just the way relationships interact. It's no more scarier than that. And when I was your age, when somebody said politics to me, I was like, I don't want to play politics. That's not me. You have to be phony. I don't want to play politics. I don't like that at all. I'm not going to be involved in brown nosing. You know, I didn't understand really what politics were all about. And I took the tact of, I'm just going to let my work speak for me. I'm going to keep my head down and I'm going to work really hard. I'll let my work speak for me. I don't have to have these relationships. But guess what? The work does not speak. It does not speak. You have to talk about what you have accomplished, what the team has done, how you contributed to it. As we say in my business, you have to talk your book. It's not about bragging, but it's about making sure that people understand the contribution that you've made. And it's making sure that those critical relationships understand who you are and the contribution you've made to the organization. Because people are always talking about you behind closed doors. People are always talking about you behind closed doors. Every decision about your career will be made behind closed doors. You will not be in the room. So how do you want people to talk about you when you're not there? And part of the way you can influence that is by creating a perception about yourself, but also having those relationships that you can influence. Now, the last pearl that I want to talk to you about is the critical relationships that you need within. The advisor, the mentor, and the sponsor. The advisor is somebody that you can just ask discreet questions of. Oh, Mary, I'm going to be working with Tom. Can you introduce me to him before we start this project? Oh, Sam, can you walk me through the weighted average cost of capital? I think you all do it differently than I did it in my old firm. Oh, Shaban, I'm going to be having a client presentation. Can you walk me through the table of contents? I want to make sure I don't miss any of our critical arguments. Those are examples of discrete questions that you can ask of an advisor. And an advisor is anybody in your environment that has the intellect or the experience to answer your discrete questions. Now, a mentor, on the other hand, is the person that you tell the good, the bad, and the ugly to. This is the person that you can share the intimate details of your career with, your fears, your concerns, your triumphs, your mistakes, your strategies. I'm in this box, but I want to be in this box. Who do I need to work and how do I get there? This is the person that you can share those intimate details with. So by definition, the mentor must be somebody that you trust. Don't just choose someone who you perceive as being successful and say, oh, she's going to be my mentor. She's been successful for the last 30 years, because if she doesn't know you very well, she cannot be a great mentor to you. Because a mentor's job is to give you tailored advice, tailored specifically to you and to your career aspirations. So by definition, they must know you very well. Your mentor does not need to look like you, nor do they need to be within your company. But they must understand your context. They must understand the context that you're working in order to be able to give you tailored advice that you can successfully execute. What's your name? Janet? And? Amanda. If I know Janet and Amanda, and they both want to become senior vice presidents, and I'm a good mentor, I will give them two different strategies, because they are two different women. And my job is to give them tailored advice that they can successfully execute. The only person that I've kept as a mentor for 2.5 decades is another woman in a completely different business. But boy, does she understand my context, because she is a service provider to my business. And I call her my script mentor. Whenever I'm about to have one of those conversations with the boys and tell them exactly how much I think I need to get paid and why I think I have added extraordinary value to my organization, I will call her and tell her exactly what I'm planning to say. But generally she will say, and Carla, what outcome are you expecting with that conversation? Because after all, ladies and gentlemen, it's not about whether or not you can use the King's English. It's about whether or not you say it in a way that your listener will hear it, embrace it, and act upon that which you want them to act on. And I trust her. I know that she has my best interest at heart. So whenever I give her a script, generally she'll say that's the wrong script, juxtaposition the sentences this way, why don't you use these words? And she's the one that taught me, when you're about to make an argument, you have to tell me why it's worth my while to execute. Don't just tell me you deserve it, or don't just tell me you want it. Tell me why it's worth my while to give it to you in the course of telling the story, right? Now, as quiet as it's kept, you can survive a very long time in your career without a mentor, but you will not ascend in any organization without a sponsor. The sponsor is the most important of the three relationships. And as I said earlier, the mentor is the person you tell the good, the bad, and the ugly to. The sponsor is not the person you tell the good, the bad, and the ugly to. The sponsor is the person you tell the good, and the good. Because this is the person that's carrying your paper into the room. This is the person that behind closed doors will argue passionately on your behalf as to why you should get the great bonus, why you should get the promotion, why you should get the next great opportunity. Make no mistake, this person is spending their valuable political and social capital on you. So there needs to be a very good reason why they're spending this capital on you. And you need to be able to articulate why you are worthy. This is one of the most important relationships that you can have. So when building that relationship currency, make sure you think about who's a good sponsor and start to build that relationship currency early. The profile of a good sponsor is anybody in your environment that has exposure to your work, that has a seat at the decision-making table, and that has the juice to get it done for you. There are a lot of people that might have exposure to your work but may not have the juice in order to get it done. So when you walk into a new environment, study that environment for about 2 weeks, unless you're in a summer internship. You don't have 2 weeks because a summer internship is 10 weeks. So you have 1 week to figure out the landscape and to figure out who the decision makers are, to figure out who are the people that can teach you and who are the toxic folks. Because by week 5, you want to have already shown that you are outstanding. And they're already thinking about how they can recruit you for a full-time position when you only have 10 weeks. The decision is not made at the 10th week. The decision is generally done by the 5th or the 6th week. Right? And you just put gravy on top from week 7 to week 10. That is how I tell my mentees to manage 10 weeks. And so far, knock on wood, every single one of them have been able to get an offer by managing it in that particular way. But that relationship currency, 2 1/4. It's worth 2 1/4. And a relationship will allow you to do 3 things. Number 1, to make the ask, I think I deserve. It will also give you access to other relationships, and it will also buy you another chance, because everybody's going to make a mistake. But if you have a good relationship with someone, it gives you the ability to live to fight another day, because you have that strong relationship. And as I close, I'm going to leave you with this final pearl. Nobody can be you the way that you can be you. Your authenticity is at the heart of your power, and it is your competitive advantage. Anytime you are trying to be someone that you're not, you will create a competitive disadvantage for yourself. If your success, like mine, depends upon your ability to successfully penetrate relationships, either internally or externally, the easiest way to penetrate a relationship is to bring your authentic self to the table. When you bring your authentic self to the table, people will trust you. And trust is at the heart of any successful relationship. When you spend time trying to be someone that you're not, you're using valuable intellectual capacity that you could use to really hear what your client means, yet is not articulating. Valuable intellectual capacity that you could use to show that quick twitch response. Valuable intellectual capacity that you could use to co-create with that person on the other side of that table. As quiet as it's kept, most people are not comfortable in their own skin. So when they see someone who is comfortable and confident in their own skin, they will gravitate towards you. They want some of that. This was an interesting lesson for me to learn, because I'm also a gospel singer, as you've heard. I've done 3 CDs, 4 sold-out concerts at Carnegie Hall, sang at the Apollo and Lincoln Center. But when I started in this business, I didn't want anybody to talk about the fact that I was a singer. I wanted to be known as a no-nonsense, hard-driving, analytical, quantitative investment banker. I'm not here to sing and dance, boys. Let's not get it twisted. Didn't want anybody to talk about that until I saw the client reaction. We would often go into a pitch, and my colleagues would say, oh, this is Carla Harris, our capital markets banker. But what you really ought to know about Carla, she's an amazing gospel singer. She's done CDs and sold out concerts at Carnegie Hall and blah, blah, blah. And I'm there rolling my eyes until I saw the client reaction. Oh, you're a singer. I so admire people who can sing, and I personally love to sing, but my family will only let me sing in the shower. And, you know, maybe you could talk to my daughter about how she integrates her love of the arts and her academics. And there we were having a 15-minute meeting before the meeting. Are you with me, ladies and gentlemen? The meeting before the meeting. So when I sat down to pitch, they heard me with a different ear. They saw me through a different lens, because Carla Harris, the singer, was allowed to be in the room with Carla Harris, the banker. I naturally differentiated myself from the other 5 bankers that would come in there and pitch that same IPO that afternoon. So now whenever I walk into a new situation, I bring Carla Harris, the investment banker. I bring Carla Harris, the prayer warrior. I bring Carla Harris, the investment manager. I bring Carla Harris, the singer. Carla Harris, the writer. Carla Harris, the speaker. Carla Harris, the golfer. Carla Harris, the football fan. I bring all those Carlas to the table, because I don't know which Carla will be the one that will connect and will allow me to own that relationship in a proprietary way. Own that relationship in a way that nobody else could own that relationship. Quick story for you, 2006, the IPO that everybody wanted was the Burger King IPO. Everybody wanted that deal because it was going to be a large quick service restaurant IPO, and there had not been a quick service restaurant IPO for at least a decade. The other reason everybody wanted it is that it was owned by 3 prestigious financial sponsors. So it wasn't just about the IPO, it was about all the other deals when they sold down their ownership positions in those companies. So this was going to be a big payday for the street. So we're in Miami. We're down there about to pitch. I'm in the corner with the CEO, and I said, "Hey, John, are you guys going to bring back the Have It Your Way jingle?" And he said, "Carla, funny you should ask. Our research tells us that was one of the most successful jingles in Burger King history. So we are trying to think about how to show it more prominently." I said, "Cool. Are you guys going to bring back both verses of the jingle?" He said, "Carla, there was only one verse to the jingle." I said, "John, I'm the original hamburger queen. Trust me. There are 2 verses to that jingle." He said, "Carla, there was only one." And I said, "John, hold the pickle, hold the lettuce, special orders don't upset us all. We ask that you let us serve it your way. But if you want some special thing, it won't take long for us to swing it. When you come to Burger King, you can have it your way." He said, now I don't need to tell y'all we won lead left on that IPO, right? But I will tell you, thank you. I will tell you, more importantly, it created a proprietary relationship, because long after that deal was over, when there was no deal on the table, he would often call and say, "We're about to say X to the street, and we'd like to get your thoughts, trust your judgment on how we should say it or whether or not we should say it differently." A trusted, proprietary advisor relationship, because I had the courage to bring my authentic self to the table. Ladies and gentlemen, your authenticity is at the heart of your power. And it is at the heart of powerful, impactful, influential leadership. Success does not just happen. You must be intentional if you want to maximize your success. You must be intentional about your performance. You must be intentional about your communication. You don't ask, you don't get. And you must be intentional about your relationships. If you want to maximize your success, you must strategize in order to win. I thank you, and the floor is yours. Thank you. Thank you. So, questions?
As you can see, it was much more powerful than just for 20 students. So all you got to hear Carla. She's had a long day, but are there questions?
Yes, ma'am.
When would be like the first time you could negotiate or like communicate anything?
Yes. Yes, you start to talk about that after you've gotten the offer, right? Because you don't know what they're going to offer you, and you should never negotiate against yourself.
But I mean, like your first offer, like when you're first going in, like it's your first job straight out of college, and it's like, hey, we're going to be, 50,000 to start.
Sure. When you are going into that process, you need to understand what the market is, right? And if they say we're going to offer you 50,000, 50,000 might be right for that role, but you shouldn't go in blind, not knowing what it is. And now there are too many sources that you can look at, that will give you a feel for what the right range is. So in that case, I might go to salary.com, depending on what it is, just to get a feel for somebody with my experience level, somebody that's going to be doing that particular role, what the range is. I would also try to talk to someone who got a similar opportunity last year so that I can understand kind of what their range was. And if I could get 2 or 3 people, now you really know that you have good data. Because one data point doesn't necessarily tell you the whole story. But if I talk to 2 or 3 people, and those of you who are underclassmen now, talk to the seniors. Talk to the seniors and say, hey, can you give me an idea of what they're offering, just a general range. You don't have to tell me what you're making, but just kind of give me a range of what they're talking about. And so now you kind of know as you're going into that what you should be expecting. And then if they give you something that's 10,000 below that, say, well, you know, I did some homework and I understand the range for this role is X, even starting out. So is there a reason why you guys are, you know, different than what the market rate might be? Now, you already have the offer. I would not suggest having that conversation before you get the offer, right? Make sure you get the offer, and then you can ask those kinds of questions. Okay? Yes, sir.
What was the most difficult thing for you to ask for in your career, and how did you approach it?
Yes. He said, what was the most difficult thing for me to ask for in my career, and how did I approach that? And that was money. That was money, because again, when I was in your seats, I had no idea that I could even articulate what I thought I was supposed to get. And in the early days in investment banking, this is different than James' part of the business on the wealth management side, because frankly, there is no ceiling. If you are a wealth advisor, you make basically what you decide that you're going to make. It's all about the investment that you put into your business. But on the investment banking side, there certainly are ranges, right? So I kind of knew what the first year associate range was, because the word on the street was if you're a first year associate, everybody kind of gets paid the same amount. But after the second or third year, they start differentiating depending on what your performance looks like, what group you're in. So there's a lot of variability that can happen. And back then, to me, it was a lot of variability. We're talking about the difference between 0 difference and $100,000 to $150,000, right? And when I started figuring that out, I started realizing, uh-oh, maybe I should start thinking about that. Then I had a very senior person tell me, you should make it clear what you expect to get paid. And I thought, I can't go in there and tell these folks what I should get paid. I didn't even have the language. I didn't know how to do it. And he said, well, I'm just telling you, I go in every year and I kind of tell them what my expectations are based on, you know, whether or not I think I've had a great year. And again, I kept thinking, I can't do that. And then I said to myself, Carla, what if you don't say anything and you get paid $150,000? But suppose you articulate your expectations and you could get paid $300,000. Is your fear worth $150,000? And I said to myself exactly what y'all are thinking, right? And I started rehearsing. I started practicing. I want to get paid. I want to get paid. I want to get paid. I just kept going through it over and over. And then finally I got my rap together. So I said a quick prayer, got in, and I went in and I said, you know, I've had a tremendous year. And I really want to make sure that I get paid at the top of my class, because we pay in classes. And I understand that compensation is based on, first, how the firm does, second of all, how your department does, and third, on your performance. And I know you can't tell me anything right now, but I thought it was important for me to articulate my expectations, because I've had such a great year. So I certainly would hope that I would get paid at the top of my class. Thank you very much. And then I got out of there really quickly, right? But I got it out, right? And I got paid. I got paid. But that was hard because I had no language and I had never done it before, right? But I have done it every year since. Yeah?
Have you ever met anyone who did articulate their expectations and they lost, like they were fired?
Oh, sure. No, they weren't fired. But again, it's all about how you say it, right? And the firm may not be able to meet your expectations, but at least you provoke a conversation around whether or not you're at the top of the class, or whether or not you're in the middle of the class, or whether or not you have needs improvement. And I talk about this in Strategize to Win. You always want to have a conversation so you understand where you are in the organization, because most organizations are non-confrontational. Most organizations are non-confrontational. So if they think it's going to be difficult to give you feedback, then they won't give it to you. So what you'll hear in evaluation after evaluation is, oh, you're doing a good job, just keep doing what you're doing. yet you're not moving. Yet you don't see any differential in pay, and you keep thinking, well, they told me I'm doing a pretty good job, right? But they didn't give you any real feedback, right? So you should always make sure that you're getting really good feedback so that you understand where you are on a relative basis if you have aspirations to perform at the highest level, right? So have those conversations. And if they say, well, you know, look, you're not ready, or we don't think X, Y, or Z, then you can at least have a constructive conversation about it. But if you don't know, then you never have that conversation, and you're sort of like this in your career, and you're wondering, right? And you can easily get discouraged if things aren't going your way when all you had to do was say something, right? Yes?
So I feel like working in Wall Street could be like a real negative place sometimes. So how do you manage to stay positive in a real negative environment?
Yeah, why do you think it's negative?
I mean, it's not just Wall Street. It could be even like, I don't
Oh,
know,
any environment.
I mean,
Any environment.
That's also really hectic and stressful. So.
Yes, yes. So first of all, I love being in the Wall Street environment because it's fast-paced, it's dynamic, it's intense, it keeps you on your toes. And it's so dynamic, it's always changing, so you can never really master it. And I like being pushed intellectually like that all the time. And you're right, not everything is going to always go well, and you might have people around you who are really negative. So rule number one, do not engage in negative conversation. So if you're around a lot of Debbie Downers and people are always talking about how terrible the environment is or how political environment, do not engage. You can always say, well, you know, everything will pass. This too will pass, and keep yourself focused on making sure you do what you want to do. I talk about being the architect of your own agenda. Make sure that you are executing your agenda. The second thing is be that person that always has something positive to say. Right? I am a perennial bull. I always have something constructive to say about the market. I always have something constructive to say about the organization. Even people that I didn't care for, you know, that I found difficult to work with, I would tell myself, they have something that can teach me. They have something I can get out of that, right? What is it about that person? I got to find something. So it became like a personal game to try to figure out what I could get, you know, from that person. And if they're just too toxic, then you can do your best to try to avoid them. Right? Because you're right, any of us are human. So if you hear negative all the time, then it does start to seep into your cells. And so I make sure that I don't keep, you know, I make sure that I'm not around a lot of negative people, personally or professionally. Yeah. Yes, sir, and then right here.
You've had several accomplishments throughout your career. How do you keep yourself from getting burnout?
Yeah, you know, how do I keep myself from getting burnout? A part of it is that I have this agenda that I talked about. And please, 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 if you do nothing else, take the time to be the architect of your own agenda. I talked about it in Expect to Win. I talk about it in Strategize to Win. Because if you know what you want to get out of your career, why you are in this seat, and the seat is the job, right? And why you are in this house, the house is where you're doing the job. It will keep you motivated to continue to execute because you know why you're doing what you're doing. If you don't have that agenda, it's really easy to get distracted. So when you don't get promoted, you get, you know, really debilitated, you get depressed, or you may make an emotional decision. I'm out. They didn't treat me well. I'm gone, right? When in fact, you might could use that as capital for yourself going forward because you were disappointed by the organization. You may be able to turn that around and use it for yourself. So by having an agenda, I never have to say, well, why am I doing this? I'm doing the things that's going to bring me joy. And I talk about that in Expect to Win. It's the balance, right? So that's why I don't get burnt out, because I'm doing something that I chose to do. But if you find yourself in a situation where you're just kind of doing it, then that's where you get burnt out. And I saw a lot of people when I first came to Wall Street that were burnt out because they were just working so hard and then kind of lost themselves. Like, why am I doing this? And do I even know who I am anymore? And I promised myself that if I was going to be in an environment where it demanded that I worked hard, then I was going to play hard, right? So that I could maintain that balance. And it has never burnt me out. Yeah. After 28 years, that's pretty good gas. Yes, ma'am.
Have you turned down a promotion because it didn't fit your agenda?
I didn't ever turn down a promotion, but I certainly turned down opportunities. So her question was, did I ever turn down a promotion because it didn't fit my agenda? No, my agenda was about to get paid and promoted. Let me be clear. Okay, so that was never a problem, right? But what was interesting is that I was given an offer in a critical year to change the role. And the person that was giving me the offer was somebody who could have acted as a sponsor. So my concern was, if I turn my sponsor down, this person might not support me behind closed doors for that critical promotion. But in my gut, I knew that if I took on this new role, I was opening myself up for a delay in that promotion. Because if I took on the new role at that time and it went okay, then they could say at the end of the year, oh, well, she did a nice job, but she's not ready yet. She's only 1 year into this new role. She needs another year to season in this role. And I knew that I knew that I knew that I was ready then, that I had a stellar track record behind me that was indisputable. And why should I introduce that question mark in that critical year? Timing is very important in your life. Timing is very important. So I turned down the person and I said, I'm going to have to take my chances on whether or not they're going to support me for this promotion. But I know that I should not leave my seat right now. And it turned out to be the right call, because next year that person left. That person ended up being my sponsor. But the next year that person left and another person came back from another country that had never really been a fan. He had never been a part of the Carla Harris success team. So if that person had to make the call on me getting promoted, then I would have been in trouble the next year. Because it wasn't, again, about the performance. I had the performance. It was all about the relationships. And I would have been exposed. So it was a good call. Yes, Jane?
Talk about turning down the Obama ideas. You took the role on as chair.
Yes.
What did you not do?
Yes. I got the call in the summer of 13 about whether or not I was interested in working in this administration. And I said, absolutely. And the person started giving me various options that was, you know, Secretary so-and-so or Administrator so-and-so, all these really big jobs in Washington that, as I like to say, had a W-2 associated with it. So it was a job. And I just didn't think it was the right thing to do for my first entree into Washington to take a real job. If I was going to do something in Washington, I wanted to do something, yes, that was appointed by the president, but something where it wasn't a job, a W-2 associated with it, because I had no previous experience in Washington. And I had a hunch in my gut that Washington was a very different place than Wall Street. And so I wanted to get my feet wet first and then decide whether or not this was something I would aspire to, perhaps even in another administration, or perhaps even later in this administration, because you can see how fast these jobs and these appointments turn over. So it turned out to be the right call, because as I shared with Jane, I've learned a lot about being in Washington just taking this chair role. So I'm chair of the National Women's Business Council, and that means the council is an organization that is a consultative body to the White House, to the SBA, and to Congress on all things as they relate to women entrepreneurship. So our job is to do a lot of research, do focus groups, to also convene and come up with information that could impact policy at the end of the day. And it's been a very rewarding position, you know, almost 2 years for me now. But if I had taken a W-2, I think I would have been quite frustrated, because now I understand why it's so difficult to get things done in Washington. It's not just about what's going on with the parties. It's about the way people think. They're very transient. Everybody is thinking in a 4-year increment. Everybody is working to the next election. So the first year, a lot of things don't get done because all the seats are changing. So if you got appointed under this administration, now it's a new administration, there's a whole different set of appointments that are going to be made. So in that first year, everything is in flux. In that last year, the 4th year, everybody's pretty much paralyzed, because everybody's looking for a job, because they know the person that appointed them may not be in the seat. So everybody's shifting again. So the only time that people really kind of focus and get things done is sort of year 2 and year 3. And I am a person that's very execution oriented, and I'm results oriented. So had I walked into that thinking that I was going to accomplish and was not able to do it, boy, it would have been a frustrating experience. Now, if I get tapped for one of the big jobs, now I understand how to work within that context and be effective. So this has been a great first role. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
What was the best piece or word of advice that you got from
Yes.
stuck with you?
Yes, the best piece of advice was frequently wrong, but never in doubt. And when I was a third-year associate, I had another senior woman say to me, Carla, you know, part of your problem is that you're too honest if you don't know something. And people pay us lots of money to render judgment. So you can't stand there like you don't know. You know, now, up until that time, I thought it was powerful to admit if I didn't know something, because I was so confident in the things that I did know. So if I didn't know something, I thought it was no big deal. And she said, you can't stand there bewildered, right? Do it like the boys do. And I said, what? She said, frequently wrong, but never in doubt. And I said, what? And she said, think about it. How many times have you heard someone say the wrong answer, but they say it with authority? They say it with confidence, right? Never in doubt, but they're wrong most of the time. Well, that did not sit well with me, because authentically, again, that's not who I am. I didn't have that comfort level just throwing something out. But I took her advice, and I understood what she was trying to say. It's not, as your mother said, it's not what you say, but how you say it. So the way that I interpreted that advice for myself was that I said, okay, if I don't know something, I'm always going to posit an answer and leave myself room to get out. So if you ask me something I don't know, I'm going to say, I believe the answer is blah, blah, blah. But let me double check that for you. I'm going to come back for that. But yeah, I think that's the answer. And then I quickly go and try to figure out what the real answer is. And even if it's different, I come back and say, you know what? I suspected that might be off. Here's the answer. And I say it confidently, but I've left myself some room, right? And I also show my intellect by at least trying to offer an answer. So it's rare that I'll say, no clue. No clue. Especially about something that's deal related, right? So I think that was the way, but that was really good advice, because from then on, I could speak with authority about anything. I didn't worry about not knowing something, because I realized that I was smart enough and I was experienced enough that I could draw on my experiences and at least have a pretty good guess, right? And be confident in putting that out there. Yeah, but that was excellent advice. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question about your feelings. You obviously you sing. That's how you express yourself as well. What was it like, though, to meet the president of the best nation?
Yes, and I will tell you that I met the president before he was president, right? And it was really an amazing experience and I happened to be sitting right next to him, because he came to Morgan Stanley when he was trying to make his Wall Street rounds so that the street would get to know him. And I ended up sitting right next to him, and it was really interesting to watch how adept he was and how smart he was to be able to field questions, because now we see him standing there and we see those two things and we just assume that he's reading that he's reading from a script. But this was no script, no paper, no anything. And you got a bunch of, other, folks who think they're pretty smart throwing questions at you, right? And he was amazing at how he handled that and how adept he was and how, frankly, comfortable he was in his own skin. And that's one thing that I have seen consistently. So despite all of the noise, despite all of the deterrence, he has, in my opinion, stuck pretty close to demonstrating that comfort in one's own skin, which I think is really important from an authenticity standpoint. So good, bad, or ugly, this is what you got, right? And that's something that I admire.
So when are you going to run for president?
Oh, no. Oh, no. And I have to tell you, I've gotten that question many times. And when I was 12, I had aspirations of being president. But it has become such a dirty business now that I can't imagine running for office. Now, maybe you guys will see me running for office at some point, but I don't know what will have to happen. It would have to be divine intervention, I think, before I would think about it, because what I don't like about the business today is it's not just about your running. I hope I have lived my life in a way that I could withstand people digging through my personal closet, right? They say everybody has skeletons in the closet. So I hope I have lived my life in a way that I could stand that. But what I don't like is that your entire family gets on display. And as I like to say, everybody has a cousin Pookie, right? And if Cousin Pookie wants to stand on the corner and smoke a joint, that is Cousin Pookie's prerogative. But because I choose to run, and the opposition wants to get to me, they dig through all of that stuff and they find poor Cousin Pookie standing on the corner. And there's Cousin Pookie on the front page of the New York Times. Right? You know, I just don't think that that's fair, you know, for your whole family to be exposed. And that is the single biggest reason that I wouldn't run. And again, it's not like I got a whole bunch of Cousin Pookies. I just don't think that's right, that people come after your kids, they come after your spouse, they come after your parents, you know, and again, they'll go all the way down to your cousins. You know, stick with the candidate, tear them apart. They're the ones that's supposed to have the tough skin to be able to take it because they know what they're getting into. But Cousin Pookie didn't tell you to run, right? So that's tough.
Any other questions?
Well, thank you. Thank you.
So I also want to thank Morgan Stanley and Jane Rojas, who is on our board, for bringing Carla in. You are a fabulous person at every level.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Jane.
So,
this has been a pleasure for me, you guys.
Yeah. So thanks for coming, and she'll be here for just a few minutes, and then she's rushing off to another event. So we've had her booked for like 9 back-to-back events for the last day and a half. But anyway, she's fabulous, and thank you so much.
Thank you. It was my honor. Thank you. Thank you. And you Strategize to Win. I go through all the basic 10 interview questions, and I talk about what they're really asking you. So make sure you use it aggressively.
Yeah.
Wow. You are just one fabulous woman.
Oh, thank you.